In the flickering glow of a Roman villa's hearth, a young woman sits motionless, her breath shallow, her eyes fixed on the bronze pot heating in the flames. The air is thick with the scent of charred wood and melted animal fat, and the faint hum of a chanted prayer drifts from the shadows. Her hands, adorned with silver rings, tremble slightly, not from cold, but from the anticipation of the ritual about to unfold. This is no ordinary morning routine. It is a sacred act of transformation, where hair becomes a crown and beauty becomes power. In ancient Rome, curled hair was not just a style, it was a symbol of divinity, status, and sacrifice, forged in fire and shaped by the hands of the unseen. To understand this obsession with curls, we must step into the heart of Rome, a city where every detail of appearance was a calculated statement. By the 1st century BC, Rome was an empire of spectacle, its streets lined with marble temples, and its elites draped in silks dyed with Tyrian purple. For noble women, hair was their most public canvas, a visual language that spoke of wealth, lineage, and virtue. Straight and adorned hair was the mark of the commoner or the disgrace. Curls, however, were the hallmark of the elite, a crown that rivaled the laurels of emperors. These curls, whether cascading in soft waves or piled high in towering structures, were a declaration of belonging to Rome's upper echelons, a sign that one was favored by the gods and society alike. The tool at the center of this ritual was the calamistrum, a bronze or iron rod that could be considered Rome's earliest curling iron. Its origin stretched back to the Etruscans, the cultural forebears of Rome, who as early as the 7th century BC used heated rods to sculpt their hair into waves that mimicked the natural beauty of the Mediterranean. By the time Rome ascended to imperial dominance, the calamistrum was a fixture in the households of the wealthy. Unlike the sleek, temperature-controlled curling wands of today, this was a crude instrument, heated over open flames or charcoal braziers until it glowed with a menacing red hue. The process was as much art as it was science. The rod had to be hot enough to mold the hair into lasting curls, but not so scorching as to burn the scalp or singe the strands. The margin for error was razor thin, and the consequences could be dire blisters, infections, or permanent hair loss were not uncommon. Behind every perfect curl stood the ornatrix, the enslaved woman tasked with wielding the calamistrum. The term ornatrix, from the Latin ornare meaning to adorn, evokes an image of artistry, but the reality was far grimmer. These women, often captured from provinces like Gaul, Syria, or Egypt, were trained to master the intricate techniques of Roman hairstyling, curling, braiding, dyeing, and pinning hair into styles that could take hours to complete. Their hands, calloused from years of labor, moved with a precision born of necessity, for a single misstep could provoke their mistress's wrath. An ornatrix was more than a hairdresser. She was a chemist mixing pomades from animal fat and ash, a sculptor shaping hair into architectural marvels, and a silent witness to the private lives of Rome's elite. Yet her own story, her pain, her skill, her quiet resilience remained invisible, buried beneath the weight of her servitude. The act of curling hair was a ritual steeped in symbolism. Curls were not merely fashionable, they were divine. The goddess Venus, Rome's embodiment of love and beauty, was often depicted with flowing, curled locks that framed her face like a halo. Statues and frescoes from Pompeii to the Palatine Hill show women with hair that seems to defy gravity, each curl a testament to their proximity to the divine. For Roman women, to curl their hair was to emulate the gods, to claim a piece of their eternal beauty. But this pursuit came at a cost. The calamistrum left its mark not just in curls, but in scars on the scalps of the mistresses and the lives of the ornatresses who served them. As the young woman in the villa braces herself for the heat, she is not just preparing for the day. She is stepping into a centuries-old dance of fire, status, and sacrifice, where beauty is both a privilege and a peril. In the stratified world of ancient Rome, hair was a mirror of power, a visual hierarchy as rigid as the empire's social order. A noble woman's towering curls, adorned with pearls and gold pens, announced her place at the apex of society. A freed woman's simple braid marked her as respectable, but never elite. A slave's shorn or unstyled hair was a badge of her servitude. Hair was not just personal adornment. It was a political statement, a public declaration of class, gender, and allegiance. To wear curls was to wield influence, to command respect, and to navigate the intricate politics of Rome's elite circles. The styles themselves were as varied as they were symbolic. The tutulus, a conical updo favored by matrons of the early republic, was a nod to tradition and virtue, its tight curls evoking the stability of the family unit. By the time of the empire, the notice a sleek roll of hair at the forehead, often paired with cascading curls, became the signature of women like Livia, the formidable wife of Augustus. Livia's portraits, carved in marble and painted on villa walls, show her with a notice that is both elegant and austere, a visual reminder of her role as Rome's first lady. Her daughter-in-law, Julia Domna, wife of Emperor Septimius Severus, took the art of curls to new heights. Her busts reveal an elaborate cascade of tight ringlets, a style that required hours of labor and signaled her status as a cosmopolitan empress, blending Roman tradition with the influences of her Syrian heritage. These styles were not mere fashion, they were a currency of power. A noble woman's hair was scrutinized in the same way her lineage or dowry might be. To appear in public with flat, unstyled hair was to invite ridicule or suspicion of moral failing. Historical accounts, such as those from the poet Ovid, describe women who spent fortunes on their hair, importing wigs from Germania or dyes from the East to achieve the perfect shade of auburn or gold. The pressure to conform was immense, particularly for women in the imperial court, where every curl was a political maneuver. Julia Domna, for instance, used her distinctive hairstyle to project an image of intellectual and cultural authority, aligning herself with the philosophical ideals of her husband's reign. The ability to wear such elaborate styles was a privilege reserved for the elite. Slaves and lower-class women were often barred from curling their hair either by law or by practicality. While a noble woman might spend hours in her dressing chamber, surrounded by mirrors and oils, a plebeian woman toiled in the fields or markets, her hair bound in a simple cloth to keep it out of the way. Even freed women, who had gained their liberty, were expected to maintain modest styles to distinguish themselves from their former masters' wives. This hierarchy was reinforced by sumptuary laws, which regulated everything from clothing to jewelry to hair, ensuring that beauty remained a marker of class. The politics of hair extended beyond the individual to the state itself. Emperors and their families used hairstyles to project unity or legitimacy. When Augustus sought to restore traditional Roman values, Livia's notice became a symbol of that revival, a return to the austere elegance of the Republic. Conversely, during the decadent reigns of Nero or Caligula, women's hairstyles grew increasingly extravagant, with curls piled into towering structures adorned with gems and feathers. These styles were not just personal choices, but public performances, signaling loyalty to the ruling regime or, in some cases, subtle defiance. For example, Agrippina the Younger, mother of Nero, was known for her intricate curls, which some historians suggest were a deliberate contrast to the simpler styles of her rivals, asserting her dominance in the imperial court. Yet, for all its glamour, the pursuit of curled hair was a double-edged sword. The process was painful, time-consuming, and often dangerous. The calamistrum would leave burns that festered into infections, and the heavy wigs and pins used to create towering styles caused headaches and hair loss. For noble women, the pain was a necessary sacrifice, a testament to their dedication to Rome's ideals of beauty and power. For the ornatresses who crafted these styles, the stakes were even higher, as their own bodies and lives were expendable in the service of their mistress's vanity. As we delve deeper into the tools and techniques of this fiery art, we uncover a world where beauty was not just a privilege, but a battleground where every curl carried the weight of empire. In the dim light of a Roman villa's dressing chamber, the air hums with the crackle of a charcoal brazier. A bronze rod, its tip glowing like a captured ember, rests precariously over the flames. The calamistrum, Rome's instrument of beauty, is both a marvel and a menace. Its simplicity belies the danger it holds. One misjudgment, one moment of distraction, and the searing metal could brand flesh or ruin a carefully cultivated mane. The creation of Rome's iconic curls was not a gentle art, but a perilous alchemy, lending fire, iron, and raw ambition to sculpt hair into symbols of divine elegance. Yet, beneath the glamour lay a gruesome reality: burns, infections, and permanent scars that marked both the women who wore the curls and the enslaved hands that crafted them. The calamistrum was the cornerstone of Roman hairstyling, a tool as ancient as it was unforgiving. Crafted from bronze or occasionally iron, it resembled a long, slender poker, sometimes etched with decorative patterns, but always designed for function over comfort. Archaeological finds from Pompeii and Herculaneum reveal these instruments in startling detail. Some are as small as a modern knitting needle, others as long as a forearm, their tips blackened from years of exposure to flame. He used the calamistrum. An ornatrix would heat it over a brazier or open hearth until it reached the precise temperature to mold hair without destroying it. This required an almost supernatural intuition, as there were no thermometers to guide the process. To cool, and the curls would collapse by midday. To hot, and the hair would frizz, smoke, or worse, ignite. The process was as intricate as it was hazardous. Hair was first coated with a mixture of animal fat, olive oil, or beeswax to protect it from the heat and help set the curls. These pomades, often scented with myrrh or rosewater, were concocted by the ornatrix in a ritual that bordered on chemistry. The hair was then sectioned with bone combs, twisted into tight coils, and wrapped around the heated calamistrum. The ornatrix would hold the rod in place for mere seconds, her hands perilously close to the scalding metal, before releasing the hair to reveal a perfect curl or a singe disaster. The room would fill with the acrid scent of burnt hair and melted fat, a reminder of the fine line between beauty and ruin. The physical toll was undeniable. Roman texts, such as the writings of the physician Galen, describe burns and infections caused by the calamistrum. Scalp burns were common, especially among young women new to the ritual who might flinch at the wrong moment. These burns could blister and fester, leaving scars that were hidden beneath elaborate hairstyles, but carried a lasting sting. Hair loss was another risk, as repeated exposure to heat weakened the strands, causing them to break or fall out entirely. Some women resorted to wigs crafted from the hair of slaves or imported from distant provinces like Germania, but these, too, required maintenance with the same fiery tools. The poet Martial, ever sharp-tongued, mocked women who hid their baldness under wigs, a testament to the lengths they went to maintain the illusion of perfection. Comparing these ancient tools, the modern curling irons reveals both progress and persistence. Today's electric wands, with their ceramic coatings and precise temperature controls, are a far cry from the calamistrum's crude brutality. Yet the principle remains unchanged. Heat to shape, fire to transform. Modern stylists rarely face the risk of open flames, but the Roman ornatrix worked in a world where every curl was a gamble with fire. Charcoal braziers, often small enough to fit on a dressing table, were the heart of the process, their embers stoked by slaves who doubled as firekeepers. Animal fat, used to lubricate the hair, could catch fire if mishandled, and the braziers themselves were a constant hazard in homes already prone to conflagrations. The Roman villa, with its wooden beams and oil-soaked fabrics, was a tinderbox waiting for a spark. The calamistrum was not the only tool in the ornatrix's arsenal. Bone or ivory combs were used to section and detangle hair, their teeth often breaking under the strain of thick, matted locks. Needles and pens, some as delicate as modern hairpins, others as heavy as small daggers, secured curls into towering structures. Dyes made from lead, henna, or walnut shells added color, but these, too, carried risks. Lead poisoning was a silent killer, its symptoms mistaken for other ailments. The ornatrix navigated this dangerous toolkit with a skill born of necessity, her hands bearing the burns and calluses of her trade. For every curl that adorned a noble woman's head, there was a story of fire and iron, of pain endured for the sake of beauty. Imagine a young woman, her hands rough from years of labor, standing in the shadow of her mistress's dressing chamber. Her name is lost to history, but her role is not. She is an ornatrix, an enslaved hairdresser whose life revolves around the curls that crown Rome's elite. Her fingers, nimble yet scarred, move with practiced grace as she heats the calamistrum, her eyes scanning her mistress's face for signs of displeasure. Every morning she transforms her mistress into a vision of Roman perfection, but her own existence is one of silence, sacrifice, and simmering rebellion. The ornatrix is the invisible force behind the burning crown, her story a poignant counterpoint to the glamour she creates. The ornatrix was typically a woman from a conquered province, perhaps a Gaul, with deft hands, or a Syrian skilled in the art of dyes, sold into slavery and trained in the intricate craft of Roman hairstyling. She was both indispensable and expendable. Her day began before dawn, stoking the brazier, mixing pomades, and preparing the tools that would shape her mistress's hair into the toothless, nodus or cascading curls of the imperial court. Her work was intimate yet hierarchical. She stood close enough to hear her mistress's secrets, but was never permitted to speak unless spoken to. Her hands, stained with dye and burned by the calamistrum, were her only voice, crafting beauty that was never her own. The physical demands of her role were relentless. Hours spent bending over her mistress, bending heavy wigs or twisting hair into intricate patterns, left her back aching and her fingers numb. The calamistrum was a particular torment. Its heat could burn her hands as easily as her mistress's scalp, and any mistake a curl to loose, a burn too severe could result in punishment. Roman texts, such as those by Juvenal, hit at the cruelty faced by ornatresses. A poorly styled curl might turn a lash, a burn might provoke a beating, yet the ornatrix was expected to remain invisible, her pain buried beneath the flawless facade of her mistress's appearance. Her emotional toll was equally heavy. The ornatrix was a confidant by necessity, privy to the gossip, rivalries, and intrigues of the elite. She heard her mistress plot marriages, curse rivals, or weep over betrayals, yet she could never share her own thoughts. This enforced silence bred a quiet defiance. Some ornatresses, as suggested by rare archaeological evidence like graffiti in Pompeii, found ways to resist subtle acts like loosening a pin to let a curl fall or mixing a dye slightly off color. These were small rebellions, undetectable to the untrained eye, but a reclaiming of agency in a world that denied them freedom. The ornatrix's role also highlights the paradox of Roman beauty. It was a collective effort, yet only the mistress reaped the rewards. While noble women were praised for their curls, the ornatrix was erased from the narrative, her labor reduced to a footnote. Historical records rarely name these women, but their presence is felt in the artifacts they left behind: combs, pens, and the calamistrum itself, each bearing the marks of their hands. Their story is one of resilience, of creating art under duress, of shaping beauty while bearing scars. As we move into the frenzy of Rome's curl obsession, the ornatrix remains a haunting reminder that every crown, no matter how radiant, is forged in the shadows of sacrifice. In the opulent halls of imperial Rome, where marble gleamed under torchlight and the air buzzed with the whispers of ambition, a fever for curls gripped the elite. By the 1st century CE, the pursuit of perfect hair had transcended mere fashion to become a cultural obsession, a blazing fire that consumed time, resources, and even lives. Young girls, barely past childhood, sat trembling as the calamistrum's heat grazed their scalps. Noble women faced relentless scrutiny, their worth measured by the height and symmetry of their curls. In this gilded age, flat or unstyled hair was not just a faux pas, it was a social death sentence, a mark of disgrace that could tarnish a family's reputation. The burning crown was no longer just a symbol. It was a mandate enforced by society, mythology, and the unyielding pressure to embody divine perfection. The mania for curls reached its zenith during the reigns of emperors like Nero and Trajan, when Rome's wealth and decadence fueled ever more extravagant displays. Hairstyles grew increasingly elaborate, defying gravity, with towering structures of curls pinned with gold, ivory, and even peacock feathers. The orbicule, a style of tight, circular curls framing the face, became a favorite of imperial women like Faustina the Younger, whose portraits show hair sculpted into a halo of ringlets that shimmered with authority. These styles were not merely decorative. They were political tools, signaling allegiance to the imperial family or asserting dominance in the competitive arena of the court. A woman's curls could sway opinions, secure alliances, or invite envy, making the dressing chamber as much a battlefield as the Senate. This obsession began early, ensnaring even the youngest members of the elite. Girls as young as 10 were subjected to the calamistrum, their hair curled to signal their readiness for marriage and their family's status. Roman texts, such as those by the poet Ovid, describe mothers overseeing these rituals, ensuring their daughters' hair met the exacting standards of Roman beauty. The process was grueling. Hours spent sitting still as the ornatrix wielded hot irons, the air thick with the stench of singed hair and pomades. Burns were common, especially for novices unaccustomed to the heat, and the pain was seen as a rite of passage, a sacrifice for the privilege of beauty. For these girls, the calamistrum was not just a tool, but a crucible, forging them into the image of Roman femininity. The pressure to conform extended beyond the private villa to the public sphere. Roman literature and satire paint a vivid picture of the social consequences of imperfect hair. Juvenal, with his biting wit, mocked women whose flat or disheveled hair suggested neglect or moral failing. A noble woman with lackluster curls risked being shunned at banquets or ridiculed in the baths, where women's appearances were scrutinized as closely as their husbands' political maneuvers. Sumptuary laws, which regulated luxury, did little to curb the frenzy. Instead, they pushed women to find creative ways to flaunt their wealth through hair, importing wigs from distant provinces or adorning their curls with jewels that rivaled the emperor's treasury. The poet Martial quipped that some women's hair was so laden with ornaments it could bankrupt a household, a testament to the lengths they went to maintain their status. Mythology reinforced this cultural fixation. Venus, the goddess of love, was the ultimate archetype of curled beauty. Her locks depicted in art as flowing waves that embody divine allure. Minerva, goddess of wisdom, was often shown with disciplined curls, suggesting that beauty and intellect were intertwined. These divine ideals permeated Roman culture, from poetry to temple frescoes, creating an unattainable standard that women were expected to emulate. Ovid's Ars Amatoria, a guide to love and seduction, advised women to perfect their hairstyles to attract suitors, warning that a single errant strand could ruin their prospects. The message was clear. Curls were not just beautiful, they were sacred, a reflection of divine favor and mortal ambition. Yet this pursuit of perfection came at a steep cost. The physical toll of curling burns, infections, and hair loss was compounded by the psychological burden. Women lived under constant scrutiny, their worth tied to an ephemeral ideal that required daily maintenance. The ornatrix, though enslaved, bore witness to this madness, her hands shaping the curls that defined her mistress's identity, while her own remained invisible. The social pressure to achieve perfect curls created a cycle of pain, and performance, where beauty was both a privilege and a prison. As Rome's obsession with curls burned brighter, it illuminated a truth: the pursuit of beauty was not just a personal choice but a societal demand, one that left scars on both the body and the soul. As the embers of Rome's beauty rituals cooled, they left behind a legacy that still smolders in today's world: the burning crown, with its curls forged in fire and sacrifice, was more than a fleeting fashion. It was a mirror reflecting the complexities of class, gender, and power. The scars it left, both visible and invisible, tell a story that resonates across centuries, linking the women of ancient Rome to those who wield curling irons today. In the ashes of this ancient obsession, we find echoes of our own struggles with beauty, identity, and the cost of perfection. The parallels between Rome's hair rituals and modern beauty culture are striking today. Women still gather around mirrors, wielding heat tools that, while safer than the calamistrum, carry the same promise of transformation. The electric curling iron, with its sleek design and digital displays, is a distant cousin of the bronze rod, but its purpose remains unchanged: to sculpt hair into a vision of idealized femininity. Social media amplifies this pressure, much like Rome's public baths and banquets, where influencers and celebrities set standards that millions strive to emulate. The burns and blisters of ancient Rome have been replaced by subtler damages: split ends, heat damage, or the psychological toll of chasing an unattainable ideal. But the pursuit remains relentless. Class and privilege, so central to Rome's beauty hierarchy, continue to shape who can afford to be beautiful. In ancient Rome, only the elite could dedicate hours and resources to curling their hair, employing enslaved ornatresses and importing exotic dyes. Today, high-end salons, premium hair tools, and luxury products create a similar divide, where beauty is a commodity accessible primarily to those with wealth or influence. The ornatrix finds her modern counterpart in underpaid stylists or factory workers producing hair products, their labor often invisible behind the glamour of the industry. The hierarchy persists, cloaked in new forms, but rooted in the same dynamics of power and exclusion. The pain for perfection, too, endures. Roman women endured burns and infections to achieve their curls. Modern women navigate heating disorders, cosmetic surgeries, and the pressure to conform to filtered ideals. The calamustrum's scars have become metaphorical, etched into self-esteem and body image rather than flesh, but they are no less real. Feminist scholars argue that beauty standards then as now serve to control and commodify women's bodies, tying their worth to their appearance. In Rome, a woman with flat hair was judged as morally suspect. Today, a woman who rejects beauty norms may be labeled unprofessional or unkempt. The fire may have changed, but the heat remains. Yet there is a flicker of hope in the ashes, just as some ornatresses found ways to resist through subtle acts of defiance or quiet resilience. Modern movements challenge beauty's stranglehold: body positivity, natural hair movements, and campaigns against unrealistic standards echo the silent rebellions of Rome's enslaved hairdressers. These efforts remind us that beauty, at its core, is a human construct, one that can be reshaped to celebrate rather than confine. The ornatrix, though erased from history's pages, speaks through her legacy, urging us to question who pays the price for perfection and why. As we reflect on the burning crown, we see a metaphor in the smoke that rose from Rome's braziers. It is the smoke of ambition, curling upward like the hair it shaped, beautiful yet ephemeral. It is the smoke of sacrifice, carrying the pain of those who toiled in its creation. And it is the smoke of femininity, a force both celebrated and constrained, rising through history to remind us of the power and peril of beauty. From the villas of Rome to the mirrors of today, the burning crown endures not as a relic, but as a living question. What are we willing to burn for beauty? And what might we gain by letting the flames die?